Hey guys, my name's Jabelson, and in this webcast I'm going to do an out-of-the-box install of the new Jet Reports 2017. Now I haven't looked at the new 2017 yet, I just know a little bit about it. But as we go through the install process, I'm going to talk about some of the new features that I think will be valuable to my clients, and you'll get a feel for how easy or challenging it is to do an out-of-the-box install. And like I said, I haven't done it yet, so all of this is completely new from scratch, so we may or may not end up struggling together. Now that said, before you can install all of the new features of Jet Reports 2017, you do need to install IIS. And if you're trying this on a computer at home, or, well, if you're installing this from, well, wherever, you do need to install IIS, which is a feature that you can install by going to the Start menu, and under Features, you can turn Windows features on or off. You will probably need admin rights. You'll probably have to do a little bit more work if you're going to actually deploy this for multiple users. But again, just for my testing purposes, here under Internet Information Services, you have to make sure that guy's ticked, and you'll push OK, and it should do a quick install. So that was Start menu, turn on, off features. Okay, let's go ahead and find ourselves the installer. I've got the build 16.0.16221, which I just downloaded from the website. And let's go ahead and kick off the required installation. All right. It's asking for my activation code. You hopefully know what your activation code is. If you don't know your activation code, send an email to orders@jetreports.com if you're not based in the USA. And if you are based in the USA, then you're going to send an email to orders.us@jetreports.com. And they will send you I don't know, 16, 20, 30 character string that is your activation code as part of a licensing email. All right, the installer changed sometime last year or the year before to now have all of the pieces of Jet Professional, as we now call it, instead of Jet Essentials. I should totally make a note of that. Jet Essentials is no longer called Jet Essentials. It's been relabeled to Jet Professional. And it includes the Excel add-in that we know and love, but you can see it also has a couple new, well, not new, but a longer list of components, which we'll go over. So we now have, in addition to the Excel add-in, we have the administration console, which has been a while for a bit. We have the dashboard builder, which I'll put in a slightly different section, builder. And then the server components. The Jet Service Tier, Jet Mobile Web Service, and I'm going to put the Jet Web Portal at the top. Okay, so, and pardon my spelling. Yes, so the Excel add-in is the tool that we most commonly associate with Jet Essentials or Jet Reports. It's the tool that allows us to build reports in Excel. And really the new feature that we're really excited about these days is the Jet Web Portal. And kind of the value add to that, or the reason why this exists, is it gives users the ability to run Jet Professional reports from the web. This is huge. The web part. Because in Jet pre-JET 2017, in order for you to run a JET report, you had to run reports from Excel plus JET Essentials. You had to have Excel, and goodness, you had to have Excel installed, you had to have JET Essentials installed, and you could only run the two reports if you were a viewer and all that stuff, and you were seated at your computer. This, of course, was problematic for users who didn't have JET Essentials installed on the computer, or if they were trying to run a JET report, say, from their browser or from a phone. And that is the promise of JET Web Portal, the ability to run reports without having to go into Excel and JET Essentials. Now, pause for a moment. This is something that people get confused about. JET Enterprise is not related to this. Well, it is and it isn't. JET Enterprise, a lot of JET Professional, a lot of JET Essentials clients also have JET Enterprise. And in JET Enterprise, you get the ability to run cube-based reports using pivot tables in Excel. And this is not, this is the part where people get confused about, this is not JET Professional / a JET report. Okay, the ability to build a pivot table has nothing to do with whether or not you have JET Essentials or the Excel add-on installed. A pivot table is just a pivot table. It's been around in Excel since, I don't know, 2007. So the web portal, while yes, you can take a pivot table based report and publish it to the web portal, no, you don't have to have the web portal in order to take advantage of reports that are using a pivot table. And we might talk about that a little bit in greater depth later. Okay, so let's just go through our installer. I'm going to choose all of the options. Okay, the first piece that we're asked about is the service tier. So the JET service tier, what this is all about is configuration. If you've ever set up JET reports before, you've had to define the connection. So you had to define the data source to whatever your database is. So for many of us, that's going to be Great Plains, or that's going to be Dynamics NAV, but you had to define the data source. You had to know what is the, where is my SQL server, which database is it, and you had to have all of this information that a lot of times when I'm working with clients, they don't just know off the cuff. So the nice thing about the service tier is you set it up in advance and you can push out the configuration settings to the users. Okay, I will use the default, and I'll make a note of this here. When you're doing the installation, use the default settings. And I know the admins in the room are saying, oh, don't use a network service account, you can't use a proper service account. But during the initial install, just historically, it's gone easier to use the default settings and then later change to a service account. And I always recommend using something like called, I don't know, JET service account. We'll create a service account later and we'll replace this service tier. You're going to install this service tier, I should make a note of that, install on SQL Server. You're going to install it on SQL Server or some application server. You usually don't install it on the end user computer. But like I said, this is my computer, so we can do whatever. All right, leave the defaults. Now, the JET Services database, right, is the database where all of these settings are stored. So as part of the installation process, we will also create a SQL database called, I believe it's called JET Services. Yes, Jet Services is the default database name. Where is my SQL Server instance? Local host SQL 2016 RC3. So for my more technical people in the room, you've already surmised, if I'm creating a Jet Services database, I obviously, with the account that I'm using to run the installer, have to have permissions on SQL Server to actually create a SQL database. So, in quotes, use an account that has permission to create databases. All right, so we'll go ahead and click OK. I currently have a database in place. Depending on the version of Jet that you're upgrading from, you may or may not be advised to do a full uninstall before you do an install. I'm just going to upgrade the existing database, and hopefully that won't break. Ooh, okay, so when it comes to using Jet Mobile, okay, where do I have Jet Mobile written down? Jet Mobile, okay. So Jet Mobile, the service, is to allow users to access SSAS cubes when not within the domain. One of the challenges with SSAS is that in order to access the cubes, you have to be within the network, right? I have to be at the office in order to use the cubes through Excel or whatever tool you want. If we want to allow users to access the cubes, to access Jet Enterprise while they're abroad, while they're at the hotel across the world, we have to have Jet Mobile service configured. And you can see right here, IIS, Internet Information Service. That's your pro tip. That's your hint that we're accessing the data not through the normal means, and I'm using air quotes, but we're actually using the internet to access our cubes. So the Jet Mobile Web Service, again, only applies to Jet Enterprise. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and leave the defaults in here, and we'll see how that goes for us. Okay. Necessary to connect to the Jet service tier. Okay, so where is your Jet service tier? Right, earlier we clicked through the connection information for the Jet service tier. Now we're telling Jet Mobile where to find the service tier. This information, I'm sorry, I lied. This information is actually going to be used as part of the configuration of Jet Professional. So Jet Professional is going to ask, where is the Jet service tier? And this is the information. All right, we install. What does it tell us? This version of the service tier is not compatible with version 15 and earlier. Users on an earlier version of Professional will need to upgrade. Cannot be reversed. This is actually a very important message. I had a user, I'm going to go back, I'm going to highlight the service tier. I had a client who was using, they had maybe 20 computers in the office, and half of them were on Jet 2015, and I was working with a couple clients, and we said, you know, we need to upgrade to the most recent version of Jet and put the most recent version of the service tier on there. And what ended up happening is that because we upgraded the Jet service tier, for those 2 people, we had to upgrade Jet Professional for everyone in the office. Now, don't freak out. You should, everyone should be on the same version of Jet in the organization. Everyone should be on the same version of Jet Professional, and upgrading your software is free. In fact, you are entitled to it. As long as you're paying your annual enhancement plan or your annual, the annual percentage that you pay to Jet Reports, you are entitled and should use the most recent version of Jet Reports because it has, all of the bug fixes and all of the extra features that we're adding in, right? It's for your own good. It's so you have fewer technical support issues. When I consult for clients, that's actually one of the first things I check is what version of Jet are you on, and can we get you on the most recent version? So anyway, it's just telling us that we're not backwards compatible. All right, let's go ahead and continue with the install. And we are off to the races over here. Got a little screen going on. It's doing some things. Okay. This is the PDF, the product enhancement guide that is included with the installer that tells you everything that's new in Jet Reports 2017. I highly recommend that you at least glance through the new features available in Jet Professional 2017. It introduces the portal. Once we open up the Jet Professional add-on in Excel, you'll see there's a new button that allows you to publish your reports to the web. And you can see there's information, including a link to a KB article about how to take and run your Jet reports through the web portal. Jet Mobile, like I said, only applies to users who have Jet Enterprise. It's your dashboard tool. It's, I would say, kind of, that's going to go here. Jet Mobile is kind of the answer, if you will, to Power BI. They're similar, right? Power BI and Jet Mobile, what they do is they take data out of cubes and they give you a tool for creating dashboards. And dashboards are great. Not everyone should have them. Many people should have them. But dashboards and Power BI and Jet Mobile, they're not really a replacement for Jet Professional. Jet Professional is still going to be used for developing that highly structured and formatted income statement and balance sheet report. It's going to be for all of your operational day-to-day reporting. You're still going to use Jet Professional. But Jet Mobile, obviously as the name implies, allows you to run dashboard-based reports through a mobile device or when you're on the go. And so you can see some of the new features that they've added. And again, it looks a lot like a pivot table. It looks a lot like what you do in Power BI, and that's of course because there's similarities between both the intent of the tool and how people are using them. Okay, so like I said, make sure to go through this document, the Product Enhancement Jet Reports 2017, to really get a feel for the new features. Let's see if we can find our installer. Okay, it says Jet Reports has been installed. Let's go ahead and finish. And let's see what happens when I pull up Excel. Okay. So let's take a gander. It all looks the same. I don't see any new buttons. If I click on the About, it tells us we've got 16.0.1. Yep, so this is definitely the new version of Jet Professional. If we look here under Application Settings, if we go to our Jet ribbon, you can see the Publish button is unchecked. So as part of Jet 2016 as well as this current release of Jet, if you go to the Jet ribbon, you have the ability to customize how it's laid out. One of the buttons that they turned off is the Unhide button, and because that's a button that I use very frequently, I turned it back on. But now there's also a new button, the Publish button. When I press OK, you can see here's a Publish button. It's grayed out, so obviously we have a little bit more configuring to do here in Application Settings. if we take a look at settings location, under settings location, you can see I'm pointed at the local user profile. So what that means is all of the configuration settings are on my computer. And what we want to do is use the Jet configuration service. Ooh. So I wonder if I can just do local and port 7090. Does it connect? Nope. What about localhost? Ha, success. Okay, so when I switch to Jet configuration service, localhost 790, it tells me I've connected to the Jet service tier. And again, because I'm connected to the Jet service tier, all of these buttons now look a little different. Notice here how it's got the little people next to it, as opposed to, let me go to the settings location. Let me set it back to local user profile. And you'll notice here that the person goes away. So when there's no person here, what this tells me is I can configure, I can set up the data source settings myself, manually, which is what we don't want. Right? Most of your users don't know the configuration settings to how do I get to nav. So that's a point when using the configuration service, which is automated deployment of the data sources, is all set up. Now obviously in this drop-down, it's not configured. I don't know how to connect to nav, and that's because I haven't set up the configuration service. In any event, what we've done is we've taken a quick look at Jet Professional for the Excel add-on, and it looks about the same, as well it should. But what we'll do now is we'll pop open the configuration service. Sorry, we'll open up the Jet admin console. Now the Jet admin console you will install on your end user computers. Right, so that's why instead of being under server components, the Jet admin console is in the first set, which I'll call end user computers. Okay, so here under the admin console, the first thing I have to do is tell it how to connect to the service tier. So it's localhost, and let's see if you can connect. Success. Okay. So here under users, I can see I'm already set up, but I should probably configure or customize the data sources. Now here under nav, under connection, I will tell it where my nav database is. And it occurs to me that I don't know off top where my nav database is. Let's go take a look. Now this is actually correct. That should be correct. They don't give you a drop down here to let you know if you have the right company. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go to the settings that I previously had and just put them in here. So let me pull up Excel one more time. Going to go to local user profile. So I'm going to use the settings that I previously had. You can see here I have a whole bunch of settings because I've been using this for a while. And where's my server at? Okay, so I just need to copy this guy. That's the name of the company. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this data source. Instead of calling it nav, we'll call it automated setup. And save. Okay, so when I switch over to Excel and I go to application settings and point myself at the configuration service, it connects, great. And notice here I have a data source that's called automated setup. So what we're getting to is by using the admin console, which is its own separate application, I can create the data source connections that all of my users use. And then I'll add people to them. So, I might have another user. Who else has an account on this computer? Guest. Okay. So I might set up another user. I might add all 10, 20, 30 users. Oh, you didn't like guest. And you don't like everyone. Sorry. So what you would do is you would set up all of your users that use JET reports, and you would set which data sources they can connect to here under permissions. So I have one data source called automated setup. I have another data source called cube. I'm going to give myself access to cube. And then the next person may or may not have access to cube. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a note under configuration that you should use Active Directory groups to manage JET data source access. This is huge. I see a lot of nav providers and I see a lot of end users assign permissions to data sources by individuals. So Jay gets it, Tom gets it, Mo gets it, Susie gets it. The problem is that as you start having more data sources, let's talk real quick for a moment about what happens when I have JET Enterprise. You have three data sources. You have nav. You have your data warehouse. And you have your cube. And in order to use JET Professional, or even Power BI, or JET Mobile, or any of the tools for reporting against either the data warehouse or the cube, you have to have permission to access it. Now I have to give Tom access to this, I have to give Tom access to that, and I have to give Tom access to that. There's a lot of space for error there, which is why I recommend you use AD groups to manage. So what you might do is you might have an Active Directory group for the JET Professional designers. You might have another AD group for the JET Professional viewers. And what you'll find is you have to give them read access to your nav SQL database, because that's just how JET Professional works. You might have another AD group that is your BI data warehouse, or maybe we'll call it BI environment, and they'll get access to the data warehouse and the cubes, and you'll also use the Active Directory groups for setting up the admin console. If this applies to you, great. If it doesn't apply to you, don't worry about it, but you kind of want to plan these things out in advance so that you're not managing permissions for literally 30, 40, 50 individual people and the new guy when they join the organization. What a nightmare. I didn't catch what the JET mobile internet, no idea what the internet address is. I'm going to pause the recording and do a little exploration.